for fromGlen. Has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
We'll need patience against the Saints. Yes, it's the warm-up episode 125. It's your host, Brady Frost. Tom Bradshaw doesn't join me this week, but the second tier's Justin Peach does. Justin, how you doing?
Yeah, really good, thanks, Tom. Quite chippy, well rested after the international break, but you know how they go, a bit boring. So it's good to get into it.
Good to get into it. You did call me Tom there rather than Brady, so maybe you're not as well rested as you think.
Tom, I don't know why I called you Tom. Tom Brady? Maybe it's that. Handsome US-based athlete. I think I'd take that as a compliment.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's you're missing Tom like the listeners. It's fine, Justin. I mean, how many times have we had you on this pod? You know.
Yeah, should know by now.
No, it's all right. To be honest, I prefer that. I get called Brad a lot, which annoys me. Not that people want to hear about email chat, but like it annoys me when my name's in the signature and you still get my name wrong. Just annoying. Do you ever get that? Or is your name quite?
I get called Jason a lot. I had an ex-girlfriend whose grandparents called me Jason for the 4 years I was with her, and I just sort of stuck with it. And if anyone calls me Jason, I don't correct them. I'm just like, yeah, I'm Jason.
Okay, fair.
Just accept it.
Okay, maybe I need to lighten up. I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about this. I don't really want to. I've got to be honest. I was doing the preview for this and my notes, and yeah, it's not great. So I'll read it out, and listeners can probably understand why. So Southampton, they travel to the John Smith Stadium after the international break, and ahead of this one, they are fourth in the table, and they've not lost in their last 8 games. They have 3 wins in a row in the league, and they haven't lost away since a 2-1 defeat to Middlesbrough in September. Justin, do you see Huddersfield getting a result out of this game at all?
Oh, yeah, I mean, look, I can put a Huddersfield Town hat on and be as optimistic as I possibly can, but if I'm going for a neutral's perspective, Southampton are a very decent outfit away, probably better away than they are at home. It's going to be an uphill battle against them, and I mean, if you'd have played them mid-September, I'd have banked on Huddersfield winning 3-0 because Southampton were terrible. But they have really started to shore themselves up, and they've started to navigate through the issues they were facing earlier on in the season. And I think that's the key thing here. It's probably coming at the wrong time for Darren Moore and Huddersfield, given the current run of form. But they've had 2 weeks to work on things. They've had 2 weeks to work on team shape and how Darren Moore wants to play and getting players back who have been injured. So there's optimism there, I guess. There's some positives to look at.
Yeah. Well, let's ask. I suppose I've been asking everyone this because obviously the situation Darren Moore's come into, he wouldn't have known about the injuries. The Huddersfield Town fans were saying it wasn't a particularly good squad anyway when Neil was in charge. What have you, as a neutral, what have you made to Darren Moore's start to life as Huddersfield Town manager?
It's been disappointing, but Darren Moore, if you go back to a Sheffield Wednesday spell, they were up and down under him then. Again, that was a short squad. It wasn't particularly blessed with depth or talent. This Huddersfield side isn't blessed with depth or talent. You're having to rely on young players quite often. I mean, Keane Harrott, he might have plenty of endeavour and get the odd goal here and there, but at the end of the day, he was playing League 2 football this time last season. Josh Curran was playing League 1 football this time last season. It takes a special manager to get the quality out of those players. Neil Warnock is a special manager. I think Darren Moore was the right appointment, and given the right tools, I think he can be a success. But this period that he's got to manage is a difficult one. It's a tricky one, and if you can keep getting results and keep Huddersfield within a decent points distance away from the bottom 3, or if they drop into the bottom 3, at least being within a swing of a punch from the teams above them, then I think that's a decent enough stint, and then you get to recruit in January. I just think at the minute the squad's short of quality, short of experience in certain areas, and I think that's showing. I don't think that's down to Darren Moore. I think that's down to a lack of planning, not a poorly timed takeover, because I don't think it's the right word, but certainly a takeover that took longer than the club needed it to. And I think that's what it's down to, is just that time in the summer that they lost to recruit. And obviously have a plan in place in terms of background scenes and whatnot. So yeah, a lot of problems sort of stem from the summer as opposed to it being Darren Moore.
Definitely. I suppose because you've covered, obviously on the second tier, you've covered Huddersfield for a few years now, and I suppose this has kind of been what we've been like, bar the Carlos Corberán season. So, what do you think Huddersfield need to look at in January? You talk about quality. Where do you think they need to look for in terms of position?
Yes, it's a really poorly balanced squad, if being honest. And there's a lot of players underperforming. Look at Lee Nichols. He hasn't. I mean, he was the best goalkeeper, or one of the best goalkeepers last season. Same again the season before that. Not looked anywhere near that quality. Matty Pearson, who is a favourite of mine, hasn't looked anywhere near his best this season. But I still think that back three of Hellick, Pearson, whether it be Nakayama, or anybody else, I think that's a solid enough back line. I think there's a lack of depth and quality at wing backs. If you're going to play with wing backs, they need to be really good options. Tom Edwards, was it against Norwich? He had an absolute nightmare. I can't remember the team it was.
I was there.
Leeds. Yeah. And he's not played much Championship football in his entire career. I think he was at Barnsley last season, New York Red Bulls as well. So is he a Championship player? I don't think he is. Might be a good squad option or a good backup option, but certainly not as a starter. And then you're looking in the final third. There's so little quality in there. Danny Ward, not made too many appearances this season. He's been injured. Again, lacking quality. Sorba Thomas hasn't been as productive as he needs to be in terms of creating chances for the final third. It's bereft of quality. It's a lack of experience in certain players' positions. And I just think probably 6 or 7 players short from being a lower mid-table Championship side, let alone a Championship side, which I think is a scary thought. I'm not going to pin that on Darren Moore or Neil Warnock. It's just a situation in the hand that's been handed to the club. It's stemmed from a lack of transition from the Corberán years to now. That's what it is.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I most people don't say a couple, but I think you're right, 6 or 7. You basically went through every position in the team. Yes, it's true. It's true. I mean, maybe let's distract us and come back to Southampton, because Tom, he wasn't here, but panic not, dear listeners, he did have time to do a history corner. He did it this morning. I got it through at about 7:02, I think, and here he is running for the train and doing his history corner.
Right. Hi, Brady and Justin. Sorry I couldn't be there with you today. You're getting a on-the-move history corner. So, history corner, Huddersfield Town versus Southampton. Only met each other 29 times in their history. Town have won 11 of those meetings, drawn 5 and lost 13. So Southampton edge the competition there, and I can't see us clawing back those 2 wins to get level, if I'm honest, this season. So the first meeting came in 1952, where Town won the game 2-0. Tommy Kavanagh and Jimmy Glazard were the goals for Town. It was Town's first season back in the second tier since 1920. So after years of being one of the country's stapled top tier teams, Town dropped down but bounced back at first attempt as Andy Beattie's side won promotion, coming second, just 2 points behind Sheffield United. The last game these two sides played was as recent as January 2020, where Town suffered a pretty drab 2-0 defeat away to Southampton in the FA Cup during the Cowley regime. Town haven't recorded a win versus Southampton for over 10 years now. They're unbeaten in their last 6 meetings. The Saints' last defeat to Town was a 2-0 League One defeat at the hands of Town, who finished third that season, just 5 points behind Southampton, who finished second. Goals from Pilkington and Gudjonsson. Players who have played for both, well, there's a few. Huddersfield-born Simon Charlton made over 100 appearances for Town before Saints bought him for $250,000 back in 1993. He went on to make over 100 appearances for them in the Premier League. Jason Puncheon, possibly Town's worst ever signing, famously needed a shit mid-match for Southampton back in 2013. Yeovil-born Martin Craney started his playing career at Southampton, making just 16 appearances for them. The centre-back will go down in Town history as a key member of that promotion-winning side. And Town signed Craig Maskell from Southampton back in 1988, where he became a Town fan favourite, having a scoring average of basically a goal every 2 games for Town, and then he later rejoined Southampton in 1994. Right, I'll love you and leave you. Can you two think of any others? Any others who have played for both? Up the Town. See you soon.
Yeah, for those who doubt Tom's commitment, he will get that in. This is not the first time Tom's done a recording on the train. He also famously once did a podcast in the Wetherspoons in the train station at 6 a.m. So it's a good lad. Yeah, they talked about play for both. I can't think of many players who have played for Huddersfield and Southampton who Tom has listed, and I'm not going to put Justin on the spot there because I haven't told him about that. So we will talk about Southampton though, Justin, because what can you tell us about Southampton and the job Russell Martin's doing? You mentioned earlier how they were a bit slow to start the season, but they seem to be kind of kicking into gear now.
Yeah, I know. I took a lot of flack, inevitably, as everybody who's aware of the Second Tier podcast, we will take a lot of flack, but we're honest. I took a lot of flack early on in the season, first 4 games, suggesting that the form wasn't sustainable, and it wasn't. They started to lose games considerably, started to get hammered. And that was a real concern because Russell Martin wasn't addressing the key areas that needed addressing. They were weak in midfield. They were poorly organised out of possession, and they were getting done very quickly on the transitions. Teams were counter-attacking them with quite a bit of ease. And we're going back to sort of the Plymouth, even Sheffield Wednesday had a bit of fun in that first game of the season, sort of midway through the second half. So they were real concerned. That's been addressed slowly, and sure, they're not the finished article yet, which again is a scary thing because they are putting teams to bed, and I don't think Huddersfield fans will want to hear me say that not finished article yet because obviously game coming up this weekend. But there's a lot of good about them now. They've got players who are finding their feet in the system. Will Smallbone's a particular favourite of mine because of how he comes deep from the ball. You know, if you're a real sort of possession purist, you'll love the way they set up. I'm not that. I'm a Neil Warnock guy. I love fast, direct football, get it into the big man sort of thing. But you can appreciate and respect the complexity in which Russell Martin plays at. Sure, they still do need to improve and convert the possession they have in the final third into good goal scoring chances and then putting those chances away. And when they do that, they might be able to compete into the top 2, but depends whether or not they're too far away. But for me, Southampton are certainly one of the best sides in the division at keeping ball. I don't think they're the best, but they're on their way up. And as I say, they've got players in every single position that will hurt. You've got Ryan Manning at left back. Kyle Walker-Peters going forward is a supremely talented player. Will Smallbone will dictate possession. Adam Armstrong is getting in really good areas. It's just a side full of quality, but there is a way of playing against him. You play a low block. Rotherham found it. You play a low block. You frustrate them, Preston as well, and you take your chances. You can come away with a result.
Yeah, I remember last season. I think it's one of the most boring games I've ever been to. But it was his Swansea side. It was the last game before the World Cup break, and it was 0-0. And I took my girlfriend's dad, who's not a big football fan. He was basically humouring me, and it was 0-0. And they had I can't remember the possession stats, but it felt like they had the ball for the entire game, and we just sat in that low block, as you say, and literally nothing happened. Like nothing happened. And I think it's the most boring game I've ever been to, really. Or certainly, maybe recently, but I said play there. But is the difference between like Martin's Swansea side and his Southampton side? Is he's got those better quality players? So, like you say, they do have players who can hurt you and convert those chances.
Yeah, there isn't a significant difference. They are quite similar. There are better quality players as well. But I think Russell Martin's tried to address more so the things out of possession that used to catch him quite a lot at Swansea in getting done on the counter very quickly. Don't get me wrong; I've said it already. They're not the finished article. They do still have quite a long way to go. I think until they hit their peak under Russell Martin. But I think if we were to label sort of things that they do need to address, it's being a little bit more potent in the final third. It's when they get the ball in and around the area, can they pick off a shot, or do they pick off one pass too many? We know Russell Martin's systems at Swansea last year. There was a bit of a shyness, I think, to really penetrate a team. They started to address that, but mainly because I think they've got the place to do it. You've got Adam Armstrong there, he does a shot, doesn't he? I think when he was at Blackburn and finished with 20 plus goals, he had one of the worst goal conversion rates in the league, just because he would shoot 7 or 8 times in a game. And certainly, sure, there's a little bit of growth there, and he's looking better, and just his decision making. But yeah, again, if you label certain disadvantages, it's that sort of split decision making that does let them down sometimes. But they have improved that as the season's gone on already.
Yeah. I do think this is a difficult test for Huddersfield. And thanks, Justin, for giving us an insight on Southampton. It is time for the fan phone in now. Tom, again, still doing work in the background. He spoke to Glenn from Saints FC earlier in the week to find out what they had to say, and here's their conversation.
Hiya, Glenn. Thank you for joining us. Let us know how Southampton fared last season.
Saints last season were absolutely shocking, as you can tell by our final finishing position, about 15 points behind anybody. We wrote the book on how to get relegated, 3 managers in a season, each one being progressively worse than the one before. Diabolical transfer window when we panic spent and brought in a load of rubbish that was not suitable for the manager that we were about to appoint. We just did everything wrong that you could possibly do wrong. It's not really relevant to this season, because this season is obviously a completely clean slate with a new manager in a new division. But anyone who appoints Nathan Jones and then replaces him with someone even worse in Ruben Selles deserves all they get. So we quite frankly deserve to be relegated, and we knew we were going down pretty much since the January.
Sounds like a bad season last season, but this season things are looking up already. Tell us a bit about that so far.
Season so far, I absolutely can't complain about where we are in terms of the points we've got and the position we are in the league table. We had a lot of turmoil in the summer with a lot of players leaving, including quite a few that you wouldn't have wanted to lose, like James Ward-Prowse, of course. And we've had to bring in replacements. We're trying to implement a new possession-heavy style of football, having basically played pressing football without the ball mainly for the last 3 years. So it's all new. We had a decent start, 3 wins and a draw in the first 4 games. Then we hit the buffers and lost 4 in a row. And then we had a very pivotal game against Leeds, where obviously 5 defeats in a row wouldn't have been great, but we tore into them, scored 3 in the first half. And ever since then, we're now on an 8-game run where we've won 6 and drawn 2. The team seems to have a lot of spirit about it, and the fact that we're sort of getting 75% possession in most games means that we do tire the opposition out quite a lot, and as a result, we're scoring quite a few goals in the sort of 93rd minute plus. So all good so far, but we just got to keep it going. We've got aspirations of getting promoted back to the Premier League this year, so we can't afford to lose too many more and just have to keep this run going.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting fight, the places for promotion this season. There's some very good teams in there, so looking forward to seeing how that unfolds. Which players do you think are going to be key to your success this season?
The stand-up player for me overall is probably Taylor Harwood-Bellis. I have no idea what he's doing playing in the Championship. I'm just very grateful that we've got him thanks to our connections with Manchester City, with Jason Wilcox having joined as our director of football. He's an outstanding player, 21 years old. He's a proper leader. You don't often get central defenders of that young age being as good as he is. So we've got an option to buy him as long as we get promoted. So that's as good a reason to hope to get back to the land of VAR as quickly as we possibly can. He overall has been the outstanding player in terms of threats to Huddersfield. You've got to look at Adam Armstrong, really, who is a strange player in that he'll do nothing for 85 minutes and then he'll pop up and score a goal or pull an assist out from somewhere. So, those are the main two men this season so far.
Right, well, you're away to us on Saturday, aren't you? So tell us a bit about how the team's been performing away from home so far this season.
Away from home, we've been pretty good this year. We had a disaster at Sunderland where everything went wrong and we lost 5-0. And we had a poor performance against Middlesbrough when we lost 2-1, having led. But other than that, we've been pretty good. We've had wins at Sheffield Wednesday and Plymouth, both with late goals. Tough win at Stoke, which proved that we weren't just Premier League nice boys who were going to struggle when it got tough. So we did well to win up there. Another last-minute winner at Hull, last-minute equaliser from our goalkeeper at Preston, and a last-minute winner at Millwall. So we're a team that, as I said earlier, we keep going to the end, and quite often we frustrate the home crowd because we have a lot of the ball, and that seems to help us as well. So I'm sure that the game against Huddersfield will see no change to the approach, and we will try and keep the ball as best we can and try and tire you out.
Brilliant to hear. I'm really looking forward to this game. All right, finally, enlighten me, make me even more excited for what's to come. What is your score prediction for Saturday, mate?
I try and be realistic with my predictions, which is why I always get them wrong. I'm absolutely hopeless at predicting final scores. I can usually be fairly accurate with win or loss, but correct scores, no. But I'll have a go. And Saints haven't been great at keeping clean sheets, but I fancy us this time. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 win with Adam Armstrong definitely coming up with one goal, and a goal from somewhere else, maybe a substitute. At who knows? But I'll go for a 2-0 Southampton win.
Okay, I'm fed up of talking about Southampton. I want to talk about Huddersfield again. So it's time for Connor's question. So the question we put out to the listeners during the international break got a lot of feedback to this one. It's probably because there was 2 turgid England games. But let's see. The question we asked was, which player do you think can make an impact between now and the January transfer window? Justin, I think I said before recording, but we've got a lot of games, but we all kind of been like, yep, sign some players, but what do we do between now and then? So hopefully we're getting some positives here. I'll read the listener responses and I'll ask yourself. Hudders 222 says Ben Wiles needs to prove why so much money was spent on him. He has offered very little so far, so he can only improve. Wanted to ask you, Justin, actually. Sorry, just breaking off. Ben Wiles had a lot of potential. We've not really seen it at Rotherham. Did you, of what he was doing at Rotherham, what do you think of him as a player? I know he's not really hit the heights, but he was obviously talked with Burnley before and stuff. Do you rate him as a player?
Yeah, I remember messaging you, didn't I, when that transfer went through? I was quite excited by it, and I was surprised by it because I was expecting a larger queue of clubs to come in for him. I think that injury last season has probably impacted him more than people might think, and he's taken his time to get back into it. But at the same time, he's come into a team who are relatively low on confidence. There's been a change in manager as well, and probably a change in demands from Darren Moore to what Neil Warnock wanted. So I don't think that's going to help. So there are those variables, but sure, he's not really impressed, but there is potential there. He's just your type of box to box midfielder. Sometimes the work that they do doesn't go noticed very often. The runs they make off the ball to create space for other people, the ability to get in around the box, the defensive, putting in a defensive shift as well. So there's those elements that sort of go unnoticed. So yeah, I think once the team starts to improve, I think Ben Wiles improves because, as I say, box-to-box midfielders, tend to go with the flow in terms of team form because they don't pick up the ball and spark a team into life because it's not really their role, or they might not have the quality to do it. But yeah, a lot of money was spent on him, not got to the heights that he needs to, but don't rule him out just yet. I think the team's underperforming quite considerably, not just Ben Miles.
Yeah, no, I agree. And to be fair, it's from the reading in between the lines, it sounds like he's been carrying an injury anyway. So yeah, I don't know. Good. Yeah, thank you. I forgot you messaged me about it. That did make me very excited. And I remember his interview actually, because he said a lot of them are quite polished, and he was just like, "Yeah, I've always wanted to play under Neil Warnock," and then Neil Warnock went 2 weeks later.
Typical.
Huddersfield in a nutshell. What else did we get? So, Candid Fantasy Football, they say it has to be Brahima Diarra for me. He looks pretty raw in the final third, but he can dribble and control the ball unlike almost anyone else in the team. When he plays to offer some sort of ball retention and attacking threat to ease the pressure off the back line, give him more starts. Yeah, I don't disagree. He did go a bit anonymous at Leeds, but I feel like who didn't? So, yeah, it's fair enough. Will Harris, he says, Delano Bergzorg, he's got all the attributes. I just hope that Moore can coach him on when to release the ball. And Will also says, then the return of our only championship level striker in Ward can only help. And yeah, Paul Gillespie says, a fit Danny Ward, we've missed his commitment, industry in finishing. Darren Moore needs him playing regularly with the same level of contribution and confidence that he displayed for Neil Warnock. Yeah, a couple of players in there. Yeah, Justin, I feel like I'm just asking you, Justin, what do you think of this? But Delano Bergzorg, he's a bit of Marmite player, I think, for the Town fans. What do you think of him from what you've seen?
I was intrigued by his signing when he came in. I did give him a little praise sort of early on in the season because he was showing some decent sparks of form. And when you don't have a lot of quality in the final third, those players who can provide it probably stand out a little bit more than what they are good at giving, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying is he's probably not a championship level striker just yet. And I think we're seeing that. And because he's not surrounded by quality, his quality comes out a little bit more. I think it's just down to Huddersfield not impressing either. And I think the listener who mentioned that his ability to release the ball, he still comes across as quite a raw player, which is quite a surprise, really, because he has played quite a few games so far in his career. But you need players to spark your team into life, and I think he's one of very few who can do that at this point. That's quite a damning indictment on where this squad is at the moment, unfortunately.
Yep, it is. I suppose I'll ask you then, who do you think is that player for Huddersfield who can make an impact? Obviously, we've got people coming back. I know Wardy was pitched in training. Radoni should be back before January. We've had people like Kasumu, all sorts. Is there anyone that springs to mind for you who you think can make an impact for Huddersfield?
Well, the Brahima Diarra one was an interesting one because, again, he's probably one of the very few players who can play with his back to an opposition player in that Huddersfield team. It's a very industrial team. And again, that's probably down to that lack of continuation planning from like the likes of Lee Bromby in the previous board, mainly because the money's not been there to spend. So again, Diarra is quite a raw player, and Sorba Thomas. I would die on the hill that Sorba Thomas has got the quality to succeed at this level. It's just not happened for him over the last 12 months, which is a great shame because his quality at set pieces is fantastic, and I think if you play him in the right position, which is for me at wing back, and do that consistently, I think you will get the best out of him. And I think Darren Moore has that ability to get across to the players and put an arm over their shoulder and say, you are good enough to succeed at this level, because he's done that with the likes of Doncaster and Sheffield Wednesday. So I think I'm looking at Sorba Thomas, and again, if you're looking at creatively from a point of view, Danny Ward being in the team and Sorba Thomas providing crosses into the box, that's a much better proposition, I think, going forwards into January than maybe what is currently out there at the moment.
I don't disagree, and I think something we have seen, and they've talked about this, and I suppose we don't really have the opportunity to mention it, but I feel of all the managers who've managed Sorba, obviously Carlos did really good with him, but Sorba's doing a lot more off the ball and like becoming a real leader in the team, which I think, like you touched on there, he's had a bit of a difficult 12 months at Blackburn and at Town. And I think that's promising. But yeah, I have to agree with you and with the listeners. I think Danny Ward makes such a big difference. Again, people are going to be like, "Oh, you're pro Danny Ward," blah blah blah. Like, he is our only championship level striker, as Will said earlier, and I think that's going to make a huge difference. He's not prolific, and I think I would argue it's a damning indictment that he's kind of had to be the main striker to get goals, because apart from that Carlos Corberán season, he's never really been prolific in his career, but what he offers is crucial to this team. And I think you touched on it there with some of the players we talked about. If that quality comes back in, and they do need to add to that in January, but you will see a real lift. I think that's kind of the point where we're at. Like, Radoni's been very good this season. It's a shame to miss him, but I agree, like, with what you said about Ben Wiles. I feel like if they had that, I always use it and people get annoyed, but we almost need that Pablo Hernandez type player. I mean, what team doesn't? But I feel like that makes Radoni and Wiles immediately better. I think Bergzorg, if he has options, you're not relying on him to be the main focal point. And yeah, Wardy, for me, he doesn't fix all that, but I think and that's no disrespect to Harrett and Hudlin, but, like you say, I think Harrett only had like 2 or 3 championship starts before this season. Hudlin hadn't started the championship game until Watford.
Mm-hmm.
So it does make a big difference. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think it's really hard to judge.
I'll throw an anecdote in. Being a Derby fan, I go back to 2011, I think, they had no strikers. Sold Rob Hulse to QPR at the end of the summer window. Literally had no fit senior strikers. We signed Shefki Kuchi on loan for a month, and we were unplayable. Wasn't prolific, but it's just having that focal point can get the best out of the other players around him. And he all started to chip in with goals and assists, and the team looked a lot better. Then he was recalled, and he went to Newcastle for some bizarre reason, and Derby went on a 15-game winless run. It does make a difference having that focal point, having that senior striker in the final third, because not only does it occupy defenders, but it also frees your teammates up, and it gives them something to aim to, whether it be back to goal or crosses in the box. Gives opposition more to think about. So whilst Danny Moore might not be prolific, him coming back into the team might get more out of the players around him, which Jack Radoni coming back in, Sorba Thomas, blah, 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 between them can score goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I feel like we've kind of got a positive in between the chaos there. So maybe it's time to take a break. Obviously, we are sponsored as always by Magic Rock Brewing. You can get 10% off any online orders that you do by using the code AHTTT10. I will be at the tap room. Oh, no, I won't. I'm at a wedding, so unfortunately I will not be at the tap room. But why don't you go down there? Most people do before the game anyway. But yeah, get your 10% off with our code as well. Right, we'll take a break and we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about Huddersfield. Okay, so we have talked quite a bit about Huddersfield, Justin, but just going into this game, really, you talked about a low block. Is that the best way for Huddersfield to get something out of this one?
Yeah, I think so. It's a really obvious shout, and there's not too much to dissect from it. But if you're coming up against a possession-based team, they're going to have majority of the ball. If you've got fast players on the transition, you can hurt Southampton. If you can be direct against them, you can hurt them as well, because I don't think the likes of Bednarek and it's not Jack Stevens, Mason Holgate, whoever plays centre half, Taylor Harwood-Bellis, they're not the most physical backline in the world. So you've got the opportunity there to ruffle a few feathers. You've got to be proper industrial, proper Brexit, if you like, to I think get a result against him. Jordan Hugo scored that goal, didn't he? They drew the game, didn't they, a few weeks ago? And he's your archetypal sort of number 9, isn't he, where he's going to ruffle feathers. So I think playing that low block and handling those transitions is certainly the best way, because they're not a team that are going to take chances from the edge of the box. They're not going to shoot from advanced area or not advanced areas from distance, because they like to get the ball to the byline, cutbacks, because it's the way to do it in possession-based football. So if you play low block, you frustrate them, you make it hard for them, and you hope for the best that they're not quite on it, I think, is the best way.
Mm-hmm. And what are they like from set pieces? Because I think as you've seen, like, defending, we were talking about this before we were recording, but Helik's our top scorer, and it won't be because he's going up front all the time. It is from set pieces. Are they quite good at defending them, or is that an area of weakness?
The first 7 or 8 games of the season, they were conceding quite a few chances. You peel from the back post, peel round to the back post. They were conceding quite a few chances from set pieces that way. So certainly, I think you've got almost a perfect scenario there with Huddersfield in terms of Sorba Thomas whipping balls in, Michael Hellig, Mike Pearson if fit, Danny Ward if fit. There's opportunity there for a lot of variation from a set piece, depending on who your personnel is. And as I say, Russell Martin, his sides do typically concede from set pieces, concede chances from set pieces, sometimes goals. Issue there is they've recently brought in Colin Calderwood. I think it was at Northampton. He's been promoted quite a few times. That's going to help them a lot in defensive scenarios. So I think from that perspective, you're hoping that he's not had enough time to work with the back line, or they're going to have an off day, or Sorba Thomas is going to have a very good day on his delivery.
Yeah. Sorry, I feel like I'm really grilling you in this one about Southampton. You might be lining up for a podcast move there. But I suppose in terms of threat, then you talked about our low block, and let's be honest, due to the injuries and the state of the squad, I feel like that is the way that Huddersfield are going to have to do it: just sit out and hold. Do Southampton have the perseverance? Like, what do Town need to look out for going forward from them?
Well, I've mentioned Adam Armstrong. He's sort of been playing in a wide right role, wide left role under Russell Martin. Obviously, he's typically a forward striker, and that's where you get the best out of him. Again, that flexibility, that fluidity that they can play with. Charlie Alcaraz in midfield as well. He's a creative option. They've got a lot of variation in their team. I think Stuart Armstrong scored for Scotland during the international break a really good goal, so he's going to come in with a lot of confidence. There's a lot of forward runners as well in that team. I've just mentioned Alcaraz and Armstrong, and more Smallbone as well. Even he's picked up a couple of goals, running from deep into those cutbacks into midfield. So there's a lot of quality there. I think Ross Stewart coming back to full fitness as well was quite a scary thought. I've come out with a shout that he still has a chance for Golden Boot despite being 10 or 11 goals behind Sammy Schmodix. I don't think that's impossible. And obviously, considering Huddersfield's current rate of conceding goals, sloppy goals, Ross Stewart might fancy his chances to get a couple. That being said, low block might alleviate that. So, yeah, they've got an abundance of quality. I mentioned the likes of Ross Stewart and all that, but I think it's the runners from deep that are going to cause a lot of issues, and it's whether or not that midfield for Huddersfield is going to be switched on enough to track them, because they like to get the ball to the byline and like to cut it back, and that's their way in.
Yeah, and I suppose I'm gonna talk a little bit more widely about Huddersfield, really. From the fan perspective, again, it's another season of disappointment, maybe over-promising, and that's not a criticism of the new ownership, but I suppose we've all been here before, and I think this is why, certainly some Town fans feel a bit fed up. In terms of the relegation battle, though, we are 4 points clear of that, and obviously Rotherham, QPR and Sheffield Wednesday haven't really been well, they're down there for a reason. Do you think Huddersfield could be okay this season? Just again, I feel like this is something we've had a lot, just because the other teams below them are quite bad.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to say. I mean, I would argue that Wednesday, Huddersfield and Rotherham have the worst squads in the division in terms of quality and depth. It's just quite blunt, but I think that's how it is at the moment. Rotherham are obviously potentially going to be appointing a new manager. Liam Richardson's currently the favourite. Could be Neil Warnock. Who knows? But I think their squad is well short, and I don't think they're as well placed in January to go out and recruit as Huddersfield might be, or even Sheffield Wednesday. Chance here is going to be holding Wednesday back. I think they're down. I don't think there's anything to need to worry about. I think QPR, I'm interested and intrigued by Marty Cifuentes. I think he can. I'm more optimistic about him getting more out of that team than Gareth Ainsworth did, for example, or even Neil Warnock, mainly because he's got the ability to get the best out of technical players. I think it's that four-way scrap, and I think it's going to be down to Huddersfield and QPR come the end of the season, should January not see too much improvement. So, but I do think Huddersfield are in the best position in January to go out and recruit, then QPR are, then Rotherham, then Sheffield Wednesday. So I think if you're going to hold on to a positive, that's it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I do agree with you. QPR, they have although they've not been as good in Ainsworth, they do have Chris Willock, Elias Chair, people who are, I'd say, would walk into Town's team. So no, it's fair enough. I suppose we'll come back to this game then, Justin, and we'll ask for match predictions because I feel like it's been like kind of Frost Nixon, if you like, you in the hot seat getting grilled. But what do you think for this one? You don't have to give us a score prediction that will, appease the listeners, because let's be honest, they're already going to not like you because you work for second tier.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't need to make friends here, do I? I can't remember what I've put in my preview for the podcast for second tier now. I think I've gone with a Southampton win, so I'm going to stick to my guns. But I think from a Huddersfield perspective, it's going to be a better performance. It's going to be a more assured performance. It's going to be one that brings a little bit more optimism. It's going to be a late goal, Southampton, probably a 1-0 win for the Saints. I say a late goal is going to push them over the line. I think it's going to be an awkward one.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I mean, ultimately, like we were talking about the relegation battle as a whole, like Huddersfield won't be judged on these games, really. I think if you looked at this at the start of the season, not that you'd predict a loss, but yeah, it'd be the expectation. Mm-hmm. I think, for me, maybe this is just hoping more than anything, but I think Darren Moore's best performance is probably that Ipswich game where we came out at them and I don't know, kind of caught them off guard, really. I think ultimately it was the bench for Ipswich that got them the draw, but we looked really good. And I wonder if we might see something similar. I know Southampton have a lot of quality, as you touched on, but I do feel Darren Moore's kind of seen that we can defend a little bit more. We saw that with Watford. And like you say, if we do frustrate them, but I wonder if we come out and try and sucker punch them and maybe we get something out of this. So I'm going for an optimistic 1-1 draw. With this, I just watch us lose 5-0 now. But I don't know. I just have a feeling. I have a feeling we might get something out of this because I wouldn't say it's a free hit per se, but there's not a lot of expectation going into this one. So and we've had that. He's had more time on the grass, and they obviously talk about how important that is for any new manager. So yeah, I wonder. So I'm going to go for 1-1, but I do think I think our chances will be a set piece. So I'll go for Matty Pearson to get the goal for us. So that is it. But yeah, I think that does it for this one. Justin, is there anything you'd like to say to listeners? I know I got a little dig in there about the second tier, but people do listen to you, myself included. But is there anything you'd like to say to the Town fans?
Oh, yeah, I'm on the spot again. I think it's a case of keep the faith with Darren Moore. I rate Darren Moore very highly. I think he's a great bloke, and I think given the right players and personnel, I think he can get a lot out of this team because I think the club's in a great position to kick on. It might not seem it, but Neil Warnock really did lead the club in a solid place. It's just about not copying those principles, replicating the principles and putting his own spin in it. I think it's going to take time. Just keep the faith. I think he can get it right.
Very well said. And yeah, I'll just say we'll be here to preview pretty much every game. So you can laugh, cry, celebrate with us, delete as appropriate, and we will leave it there. So Justin, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks to our sponsors Major Brewing for this episode, and thanks to you the listener for tuning in. We'll be back to preview the next game to Tarfin Out and Up the Town.